I'm pleased to welcome to the stage our speakers for the next portion of this. When LSR and I first sort of conceived of this event a couple of months ago, we thought of Part A, Part B, and Part C. So this is Part B. We already had Part A, and Part C is going to be the Israelis bringing a fulsome delegation. Where's Dalit? Dalit, raise your hand. Are you still in the room? Dalit bringing a fulsome delegation of Israeli energy-related companies sometime in the near future. So thank you so much. We have, I'm just going to do this in, His Excellency Yusuf Ahmed Al-Ali, Undersecretary of Electricity and Water at the UAE Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. We have Lior, I'm going to say this wrong, Lior Shilat, Director General at the Israeli Ministry of Energy. We have Ofer Block, CEO of the Israel Electric Company. We have Mohammed Al-Bakr Al-Ramahi, Director of Asset Management and Technical Services at Masdar Clean Energy, a really progressive, innovative company here in the UAE. And of course, dear friends, Joe Annis, President and CEO of AMEA at GE Gas and Power, and Norm Gilsdorf, Senior Vice President of Global High Growth Regions and President of the ASEAN region for Honeywell International. Both GE and Honeywell are key American companies that are doing significant business in the UAE and very significant and innovative business in Israel. So trying to bring the Abraham Accords of all of this aspect together here on the stage for a discussion. So let's just get started. I'm going to ask first His Excellency Yusuf Ahmed Ali. Ahead of COP26, Yusuf, the UAE announced its commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2050. The commitment includes $163 billion to be invested in renewable energy in the near term. Tell us about those plans.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for the nice lunch. The salmon is really nice. And really it is difficult to speak directly after the lunch. Thank you very much. UAE took different steps, many steps since, I would say, since 15 years when we started our renewable energy program. We did many projects that with proud we can say today UAE has almost 24% of its energy coming from clean sources. Besides that, we implemented many projects that can be classified as first of its kind, regionally, sometimes globally. We did the carbon capture project in Abu Dhabi, 800,000 ton, one of the first of its kind. We did different waste to energy projects. We have one will start running soon. We have other massive projects here in Dubai, probably the biggest in the world, 1.8 million ton of municipal waste. And we have other projects to come in Abu Dhabi. So UAE already doing a lot. So committing to net zero by 2050, I see it as natural progression for the country when it comes to reduction of carbon footprint. How did we achieve this in the UAE? We relied on friendship, partnerships, in order to attract technologies, in order to attract talented people to implement all these projects. So Danny, on the 163 billion US dollars, I can say that we already invested a lot when it comes to renewable energy. UAE by far has the biggest percentage of renewable energy and of clean energy in this region. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to innovate in order to reach our target. That's why, based on this new ambition by the country, what we do now in the ministry, we are revising our national energy strategy to cater for this ambitious target. And this revised strategy will include new technologies, new ways of doing business, such as the hydrogen. We need to see what we can do with hydrogen to further reduce our carbon footprint.
I want to come back to you on hydrogen in a moment because it's very inspiring what the UAE is thinking about, and I want to explain to the audience a little bit. But first I want to go to Lior Shilat, the minister, because the Minister of Energy in Israel has stated that Israel's biggest challenge is transitioning to green energy, and that Israel needs to become a green arrow in the region. When you were brought into the ministry, the minister said that you have the creative thinking, the determination, and the perseverance needed to promote this transition. We got those quotes offline.
She said it on me?
She was talking about you.
Can you send me a link to that?
What, she's not saying that today at this moment? No, seriously. Tell us what your plans are to help push Israel towards a low emissions energy economy. Very, very important.
Okay, so when Minister El Arar spoke about the challenge, it's something that is important to understand. Israel set as a goal to reach 30% of renewable energy, of clean energy production by 2030. But in fact, because of the unique nature of renewable energy in Israel, remember that we don't have any source of hydro, okay? We don't have any big river. We have the Jordan River, it's very big and it's PR, but when you actually see it, then you understand that we have a problem there. We don't have any source of geothermal electricity, and also with wind, we are very, very limited. So actually, in fact, when we speak about clean energy in Israel, most of what you talk about is solar energy. And because of the unique traits of solar energy, in fact, in order to reach the goal of 30%, we need to double the entire electricity system in Israel. So imagine that Israel was founded in 1948, everything that was built between 1948 and 2020, and now we have 1 decade to double this capacity and reach an additional 16,000 megawatt of installed capacity of photovoltaic, and definitely that's a big challenge. Not to mention that, of course, we don't want to stop in 30%. Israel, like the UAE, committed to a net zero policy, a net zero target until 2050, and in order to reach this target, we want to continue after the 30% threshold, and clearly that's also a very ambitious goal because of the limitation that I explained before. We believe in 3 major pillars in our energy strategy. The first one is, of course, renewable energy. The other one is reducing energy, the use of energy. We believe that every megawatt that was not, the best megawatt is a megawatt that was not used. And clearly that's a policy that we want to enhance. We just passed a 1 billion shekel program 4 weeks ago. We just passed, meaning I was appointed 4 weeks ago, but the ministry passed a 1 billion shekel program to reduce the use of energy. And funny enough, on the other hand, we want to move, of course, from oil, from fuel into electric cars. So on one hand, we're trying to reduce. On the other hand, of course, we will be forced to increase our electricity capacity in order to give electricity to electrical car. And of course, that's also a big challenge to our system. So these are the 3 pillars. And above these 3 pillars is, of course, international cooperation. And I guess we'll speak about it later, but it's very important to understand that we will not be able to achieve those 3 goals without having the international cooperation. And that's why I'm so happy that you invited me here, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about international cooperation with business, and I'd like to go to Mohammed from Masdar, because you spoke, Lior, about solar, and at Masdar, solar is one of the key technologies that Masdar has utilized to move forward in its green and renewable mix. Mohammed, what lessons can you provide the audience and the panelists here on the renewable energy industry from the investment standpoint that you're so involved in?
Well, firstly, putting me on the spotlight, especially my ex-boss is sitting here. So, Yusuf, before joining the ministry...
It seems like it's that kind of a day, right?
Yeah,
all the
I know.
I know. Helping out.
Yusuf, before joining the ministry, used to be the executive director of Clean Energy, and he's one of the founding members of Masdar, by the way. And I really feel flattered to be joining him in this panel. Now Masdar, we've celebrated our 15th anniversary. And we've grown from a small regional company that was established to diversify the economy and transfer it from resource base to knowledge base into one of the world leading and internationally renowned organization in the spectrum of clean and renewable energy. Currently and proudly, Masdar now is present in 32 countries with a gross capacity of 13 gigawatt and a total investment value of operating assets and committed pipeline exceeding $20 billion. Lessons learned is, renewable clean energy is the future. It's something that we need to embrace as the way forward. We need, as per the discussions that I had earlier, regarding, for example, what is our role? We are a total solution provider. We are a mega scale developer that works agnostically on technology, exploring opportunities internationally. We learned that the best way to develop mega and giga projects is with international and strategic long-term partnerships that empowers and adds value to the communities where we develop. So if we are developing in Israel, for example, we will be trying our best to partner with Israeli countries to add value into the GDP of Israel on macroeconomy. We'd like to partner with the subcontractors, with the suppliers across the value chain. We'd like to support the local industries as well. In addition that we always compete in a very fearsome way to always reduce the cost of electricity, levelized cost of electricity. We've been one of the pioneers who helped break records. So currently, the record that we hold is for the Al Dhafra 2 gigawatt in Abu Dhabi at $1.35 per kilowatt hour. The irony is that price, which the international community held and kept, demanding further reductions, and everyone was talking about the dollar cent. But now, because of there is a paradigm shift now in the supply chain and the increasing of prices, where the 1.3 now is equivalent to $3. But we will still help the international community in bring the latest and greatest of technologies. Technologies like bifacial. We were the very first one to implement bifacial here in Dubai, in Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Park, the 800 megawatt. It's a pioneering technology that help us capture irradiation, global horizontal irradiation from both sides, increasing the gain and increasing efficiency, reducing levelized costs. We've introduced the robotic cleaning as well. Technology is key to help us always, leading edge into competing favorably and bringing the new frontiers and new generations of clean and renewable energy to the international community.
Thank you. I want to go to our friends at GE and Honeywell, but first I want to ask Ofer from the Israel Electric Corporation. Just a quick question. I mean, IEC is responsible for generating, supplying electricity to all sectors of the Israeli economy. And we were discussing at lunch your plans for transition from some existing coal-fired plants that you have to all green, all renewable by the year 2024, I think you said, or 2023. Which was it?
No, it was 2024, but it's not to green energy, but first of all, to gas.
To gas. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. But that's a very ambitious plan, given how much of your electricity grid still depends on the coal mix. So say a few words about how you're going to achieve that, and what are the opportunities for green to be put in there besides the gas that you're going to buy from GE's gas turbines and things like that?
So first of all, we have three major initiatives. The first one is almost already over, is reduction of emissions by conventional means like scrubbers and so on. We are number one in the OECD in reduction of emissions from energy, from the energy sector in the last decade. The second initiative, as you said, is moving from coal altogether to gas, to natural gas. That will take between 3 to 4 years. We're going to shut down some of our facilities, our old facilities, and the rest is going to be transferred to gas quite quickly. And the third initiative is when we're talking about 30% renewables in 2030, IEC is, I think, the major enabler for that via the grid, because we operate and own the grid. We have to double and more the capacity of the grid and move from let's say, more traditional grid to really a smart grid from A to Z. So that's three major initiatives and very challenging.
So, Joe, GE is recognized around the world as a leader in power generation. Can you just give us a rundown of some of the really innovative things that GE is doing right now, and what are the opportunities for international cooperation in that regard?
Sure. Thanks, Danny, and thanks for having us here. It's great to be here. A couple areas I'll point to for technology, right? One is renewable energy. So in our wind turbines, we have the Haliade X, which is the largest wind turbine capable of producing 14 megawatts. So significant improvement in terms of pushing the boundaries in that technology. Second is in gas. So we're talking a little bit about the gas turbine. The latest that we're actually going to be we are installing right now with Israel Electric at Orat Rabin is the H-class, and that is a world record gas turbine. It's achieving 64% efficiency, and obviously by converting a plant from coal to gas, and that you're reducing significant amount of CO2. You know, we're implementing a similar project here in the UAE, and that's, you know, to put it into reality for someone, that's the equivalent of taking about 4 million tons of carbon away from the atmosphere, equating to about 1 million cars off the road, right? So these, you know, they may sound like they're small improvements, but they are actually impacting the countries significantly in terms of cleaning the environment. So those are a few. I think the third area is, obviously, we think about, you know, long-term infrastructure and the investments made. Those are usually over a 20 to 30-year time frame. So we've invested in technology to actually improve on existing technology that's already in operation. So we're doing that here in Abu Dhabi with ADNOC, where we've installed technology that'll improve the output and reduce the improve the efficiency as well. So you're reducing your fuel consumption. So those are some of the areas that we're currently investing in and continue. The other area that I would mention is also in our digital capabilities and the grid capability. So, you know, as countries are transitioning into this energy transition and relying more and more on adding more renewables to your grid, you obviously have to know how to balance that grid and have the right software and technology to be able to accommodate that. So that's another area that we're investing in heavily, Danny.
So thanks, Joe. Before I go to Norm at Honeywell, I want to ask Mohammed and I want to ask Ofer. Ofer, these very aggressive plans, and Lior and others jump in here. These very aggressive plans to transition to gas. How much does that depend on this? This pipeline, this going through, this that you're working with and you're talking with the Emiratis about?
Well, I don't see the direct connection, but we feel that we have enough gas to fill our needs for the next 2 or 3 decades.
Okay.
So that's the problem. We have 3 reservoirs already up and running almost. So it's in terms of let's say energy security, or it's good enough. We will maintain coal as a backup for times of trouble, but we see that we'll need, especially if we move for 30% in 2030 of renewables, real renewables.
Okay. So Norm, Honeywell UOP produces the fuels that power our cars, trucks, jets, and trains. Honeywell is striving to create cleaner fuels by developing processes that reduce emissions and produce renewable fuels and produce renewable fuel sources. Can you talk a little bit about green diesel, green jet fuel, and then we're going to transition to a discussion about hydrogen. So maybe throw in a few words about hydrogen there before I put my friends in the UAE back on the spot on hydrogen.
Sure, Danny. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. You're right. Honeywell has a long history of developing technology to improve energy efficiency, to improve the environment. We spend about half of our R&D investment in new products is just around products that help our customers with environment or sustainability. We were the inventor of the low global warming refrigerant, which is being, brought in with, by the way, zero net carbon in both the UAE and Israel today. But one of the areas we focused on actually many years ago, before it became so well talked about, is the renewable, or what we call green jet fuel and green diesel. So this is our eco-fining process. We actually started producing green jet fuel for United Airlines in 2016. Got actually 20 units around the world in 9 different countries. And this technology takes, it's very interesting. It takes food waste, animal waste. It takes non-edible oils. It takes, even today, we're now using algae. And recently with United Airlines, we entered another deal with a company called Alder to use wood waste and wood byproducts to make a green jet fuel or green diesel. And what's great about this product is it's a drop-in product. It means that it doesn't need any special treatment or transportation or blending. It's just as good as regular jet fuel, except it doesn't have a carbon footprint. And it's going to grow, obviously, in popularity and probably double and triple the demand over the next few years. And again, it's a good way to use our waste material. So I'm very excited about that. Obviously, we've had discussions in the UAE about that. The key is obviously the right feedstock, and then partnering with folks like ADNOC to get it into the system. But hydrogen, Danny, that's a really exciting area. For us, you actually can take a green or a blue hydrogen and put it with the bio waste or the oil waste and make a completely green jet fuel or diesel. Our focus there is helping the production of blue hydrogen. We have the most advanced CO2 recovery, which enables the CO2 to be removed in the hydrogen production, and it can then be stored or put back in the ground. And today, obviously, lots of hydrogen is produced. We can add this technology to that production and any new production to be able to get to a green, a totally blue hydrogen, and as green hydrogen gets developed. So that's a second exciting area, and I think the hydrogen economy will grow. We're even looking, I think you heard at the air show last week, about hydrogen-powered drones and hydrogen-powered aircraft. So I think the future's there once the hydrogen gets out there and gets developed and the price comes down. Thank you.
So on hydrogen, it was the middle of COVID, and my dear friend Badr Olama, who is running the GMIS Summit right now, called me and said, Danny, we need to have a Zoom to talk about something. And I said, okay. He said, hydrogen. We're forming a hydrogen alliance in the UAE. And 3 of our major companies are coming together with the UAE Ministry of Energy, and we are going to promote hydrogen use in the world for the future. I said, that's great. That sounds like Masdar and all the things that you're doing. He says, no, Danny, you don't understand. You know the brand names like ExxonMobil and Chevron are global names that are known all over the world. We are going to form a company and an alliance. We don't know the name of the company yet, but 20 years from now, when hydrogen is widely adopted, this UAE company, that's a partnership with others, will be known around the world and branded around the world as a global name in the production and the leadership of deploying hydrogen. Very, very, very ambitious goal and objective for the next 20 years. So I'm going to put you on the spot to say a few more words about it. We had you on a webinar recently talking about this, and amazing. I mean, talk about how you're going to be in all these countries around the world and who your partners are going to be to help you do this.
I look at hydrogen in 2 different models or roles. So the first model for hydrogen, what is the impact? What is the role of hydrogen in the decarbonization of our national carbon footprint. So we are expanding with the renewable energy. We work on different initiatives that allows us to have more renewable energies. And one of these initiatives is to strengthen the interconnections with the other countries and eventually to be also interconnected with Israel and Europe when it comes to electricity, gas network. This will allow us to expand in the renewable energy. But we think still, the full reliance of renewable energy is not, you will definitely need to have gas in the network. And by having the hydrogen production, we'll be able to decarbonize this small segment of conventional generation. Beside our generation, we also will use hydrogen to decarbonize our industries, steel, aluminum, heavy transportation. Electric vehicles will be probably good for small cars. However, for the big trucks, for the marine transportation, we'll still need a fuel like hydrogen or coming from hydrogen. So this is one aspect of the hydrogen, decarbonization, our internal economy. On international level, we look at ourselves, and this is a fact, UAE is one of the major exporters of energy, oil and gas. I don't know, we are the number 6 or number 5. We want to maintain this position as an exporter of energy. And with the global challenges with the climate change, we need to think about being an exporter of a clean source of energy. We are well positioned with our natural gas resources to fill the gap during the energy transition by supplying blue hydrogen. And in fact, our national company, ADNOC, started the export of blue ammonia to our markets, our conventional markets, mainly Japan, Korea, now India. This is where we see the demand for blue hydrogen. The debate is still there in the West, whether blue accepted or should be green or should be pink. So we still, of course, need to see what will be the result of this discussion, and then we'll target to be an exporter of blue ammonia or blue hydrogen to that region. Of course, this is a transition period. All of us will reach a stage where green hydrogen will be affordable. So we'll keep also working on that track.
What year is that, green hydrogen affordable?
No idea.
Crystal ball. You have a crystal ball.
I think 10 years. I think
10
we
years.
require,
Okay.
I think personally, but the people who work in technology may come back and say, no, we know a technology that is affordable now. So I think it will take time. The cost of energy is high. So if you want to use electrolyzers and generate, you will need 24/7 electricity source. 24/7 electricity source is expensive. It's not the solar energy. Solar energy is an intermittent source of energy. So you need batteries, you need different technologies, which will make it expensive. So UAE will be a supplier of energy during the transition by the blue ammonia. And this will create a lot of opportunities for investors, technology companies, licensors to come here and support us in doing this. The American companies are our historical, I still remember from the old days, of course, GE and Honeywell, they are just part of the family, but other companies like Fluor and other companies that really helped us historically to build all these huge industries in the UAE. They are welcome again to come back and help us in setting up a cleaner industry that is based on blue hydrogen and green hydrogen in future.
So that's a great segue, Your Excellency. American companies are facing more and more competition around the world. I always try to talk to them, and my colleague Thomas Bruns is here from the U.S. Commercial Service, and we have friends from the Israeli Embassy from their commercial service. We always talk about partnership and how to make the pie bigger. So Lior, How do we make the pie bigger in international cooperation in these areas? How do we work? What's the name you're going to give the Israeli-UAE partnership in hydrogen, that company, for the future 20 years from now?
So we spoke before about international cooperation, and we just came back from COP26, and when I came back from COP26, I told some people that I never saw a gathering, such a big gathering of true believers. So they asked me, what do you say? How do you speak about people that many of them are progressive as true believers? I said, well, when you ask people how are they going to reach the net zero policy of 2050, so they start with renewable, and then that, and then that, and that. And at a certain point, I say, okay, and what else? And then they look up and say, well, you know, there will be some kind of technological development.
The aliens will come and bring us
Exactly.
technology.
So, you know, in Hebrew there is a term, Bezrat Hashem, which is the translation of Inshallah in Arabic. I'm not sure. With God helps, I guess that's the translation in Hebrew. So I never saw a field in which God is so present like it is in the energy field right now.
Well, we are facing possibly the end of some of the world as we know it if we don't fix these problems. So God better be present, right?
Absolutely. But as you know, God helps people that help themselves, and that's where we came in, or we try to come in and try to see how can we help the technologies that would close the gap that was discussed before, and hydrogen clearly is a very exciting way to close this gap. I would just shed a light on one issue when we talk about hydrogen. This is the regulatory framework, okay? We are building right now, and it was discussed before, gas turbines. We are building infrastructure, okay? Are we doing them in a way that will also fit when hydrogen will be? Because we know that hydrogen will not work well on our existing forms. So is the industry working today to make those,
So let Joe jump in. Are your gas turbines going to be able to be converted to hydrogen? And Norm, are your scrubbers and cleaners and everything going to be able to be converted to hydrogen easily? Go ahead.
No, it's a great question. So the answer is yes. Today we have over 120 gas turbines around the world that are already burning on some form of hydrogen. In the advanced class technology that's being deployed here in the UAE and in Israel, it can currently burn up to 50%, so a blended rate of 50, and then we can get to 100% probably by 2030, right?
So you said 10 years, so they'll have it before your 10 years.
Absolutely.
Okay. Norm, do you want to comment on that? No.
No, I'd just add that the technology to remove the CO2 is pretty much defined and ready for any kind of gas, and can remove the CO2 to well over 95, 97%. So we're ready to remove it today. Okay. Place will be where to store it. That'll be key. The Middle East actually is interesting. A lot of discussions last week at ADIPIC. The Middle East actually could be a home to a lot of CO2 because of the geological formations in the region. So it may be a place that we can put the CO2, we can make the hydrogen, and Joe's turbines can burn it.
Okay.
So I'm going back to the regulatory framework. Okay, so we have the technology, but what do we as government do in order to make sure that they would also be installed? What about the pipelines? We spoke about one form of technology. We spoke about CCU and CCS. Do we need regulatory for that? Okay, we're always talking about regulation, about taking something out of the earth. What about putting it back? Okay, what is the framework that we need to do? So remember that when we talk about advanced technologies, we need to think also how we as government encourage those technologies. And in a sense, we're betting, okay? Because I'm not sure that hydrogen or CCS or CCU would be the solution. Okay, I don't have a crystal ball, and that's actually what we need to do. We need to be bold and bet, and also bear some losses, maybe.
So the theme of GMIS the last 2 days is very clear that industry is really pushing ahead here. Industry is really taking the lead. Governments, and you were at COP26, governments are coming along, but it's still messy and ugly, and they're not leading and implementing and putting policies in place that they need to. So get with
Messy
it.
and
Get
ugly
with it.
is a
Come on,
word
let's
we
go.
like to hear more.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open it up for a couple, 2 or 3 questions from the audience, and then we're going to call it a day with our panels. Does anyone have a question? My only rule is that you identify yourself and say where you're from, and make what you say after that a question and not a statement, please.
Sure. If I could proceed it with a statement and then put it.
A statement better be a few words.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is I represent 2 entities which are pretty much got to do with a lot of things that are being discussed here. One is the International Federation of Indoor-Israel Chambers of Commerce, which you hear about everywhere right now with the discussions around the Quad and the Trilateral. We have to our credit the maiden Trilateral deal involving Israeli world leader in robotics solar cleaning called Ecopia, which I'm sure the audience knows very well. They got their first project in UAE through us, which actually the robots are made in India. So there's an Israeli world leader making robots in India, getting the first project in UAE, which is a very landmark project related to the ruler of the Dubai, and in collaboration with a French renewable energy giant.
You're losing me on words here. Where's your question?
All right, so the point that I wanted to make and the question that I wanted to ask, we hear a lot about blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, and so on. And in every form of renewable energy, there needs to be a sustainable investment that needs to happen. We heard that during ADIPEC recently, and we've done something similar as a model with Ecopia. Why can't we do it with hydrogen as well, so that it's sustainable, it stays for the life of 20, 30 years instead of just doing a capex and having another technology another 10 years down the line? Is that possible? That's the question for everyone.
So my friends in the UAE, I think you might be the most advanced to answer that question at the moment, at least.
The most, I don't know if I understood the question very well, but for any deal, any projects to happen, the most important thing to have is an offtake agreement. So without offtake agreement, you cannot do a reliable long-term offtake agreement, you cannot do renewable energy projects, you cannot do hydrogen projects, you cannot do the robotic solution here in the country. You cannot do anything. So long-term supply, not demand, need to be created to have all these projects. And this is what made all the projects here. Waste to energy, renewables in UAE, in Israel, in all the countries. And the same should happen also with the hydrogen. So we think and we hope demand will come. And this demand will allow us to invest in these projects.
I could add by a practical example. We at Masdar, we've launched a project called Green Falcon. This is a project, a demonstration project whereby we will be producing various products of green hydrogen. So in phase 1, we'll be focusing on sustainable aviation fuel. So we'll be producing green kerosene, 5,000 liters per day to start with. And we have already signed a committed offtake agreement by both Lufthansa, Etihad for that product. So this is sustainable, this is long-term, and this is leading to a commercialization of a long-track sustainable commercialization of the technology. Thank you.
We have a few members of the press in the room still. Do either of them or any of them want to ask a question? Go ahead.
I can tell you that Masdar is already active in Israel, and we are exploring opportunities to help Israel reach their very ambitious targets, the 30%. I think it used to be 17, now it's been upgraded to 30. That's 15 gigawatt, which opens a great horizon for developers like Masdar to compete, of course, against price and against value creation, as I said, in the state of Israel for the best welfare of the Israeli people and also create opportunities. I mean, the Abraham Accord, as Sean Murphy said, not only open horizons for UAE and Israel, but also for US companies, for Jordanian companies to all collaborate and explore opportunities in the spectrum of not only the renewable energy, but also in sustainable water desalination, because we know that the region is arid. Both, for example, Israel, Jordan is considered to be an arid region with water stress issues. So that opens a great spectrum of opportunities, and I think the name of the project says it all, prosperity. It's a true prosperity for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, unless there are any other questions, I think that'll do it today. It was really wonderful to be here in the U.S. Pavilion, and we thank our hosts from the USA. We thank our co-hosts from Israel. Elisar, thank you. And please, a warm round of applause for our panelists. Have a great day, everyone.